Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dubin, your host, and I thank you so much for being with us here on this program that comes your way every Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and for the month of December 2023, we're on from 8 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday. So I'm hoping that you will avail yourselves of any or all of those, because our guests always have something incredible to talk about here on the program. We podcast at those times in particular at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing through some financial support, we'd be greatly appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. We also ask that you spend time during this, the decade of perfect vision, going within and listening to that still small voice. With all of that being said, we have a very interesting program today. We're going to talk with a gentleman who has written. It's almost like it's been taken from some of the pages of what we've been talking about on this program. The title of his book today is "There Is Another Way to Happiness," and the subtitle is "The 4-Step Cast Process That Will Transform Your Life." And Chilton, Dr. Chilton, is our guest. Thank you so much for being with us here on the program. I've been looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you, Richard. It's just a delight to be with you and be with your audience in California. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know, you and I both know that there is a passage, if you will, in our founding documents that gives us certain inalienable rights. And among them, this is not only them, this is just a few: life and liberty. I think we kind of understand what that is, but I noticed that they didn't give us happiness. They gave us the pursuit of happiness, which I find rather a little odd, in that they would even put that in there, for that matter. And yet that's one of the topics that comes up quite often on this program in terms of what people are looking for. And we're talking about true happiness, not winning the lottery happiness, not having another baby happiness, not getting a brand new job with a huge salary happiness, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. But really, what true happiness is. And from your perspective, what is true happiness?
Well, I first of all, I love your historical perspective. I've never heard my book or this thought couched like this. For me, true happiness is living in the now, being present in the now. I in the introduction of my book, There Is Another Way to Happiness, I talk about I'm probably the most successful person I may know. I have a 52-page CV, 170 publications, 5 startup companies, 30 patents, blah, 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 blah. And I was really kind of at Wake Forest University, where I came from. The president of the university asked me to show some visiting people around, and I just, I showed them around, and I listened to myself, and I started out in a house without a bathroom in the Appalachian Mountains, and I was telling the same rags to riches dragon slayer story over and over. And I was listening to myself, and I got sick. I just said, you know what? I need to stop here. The facts of what I'm saying are true, but the way I'm telling it, so what is happiness? Happiness is not depending on that. 2/3 of Americans are unhappy. according to a recent Harris poll. If you're a millennial, the only way, according to this same poll, that you believe you can be happy is you must make over $525,000 a year. We in Western societies have been given a formula for happiness that simply does not work. Now, if it had worked, then I would have achieved it. The 52-page CV, the moving through the ranks, Johns Hopkins, University of Colorado, head of molecular medicine, Wake Forest, the head of center here at the University of Arizona. It would have worked, but it doesn't work. So back to your initial question, what is happiness? Happiness is living in the moment. It's being in the now. It's embracing every moment and realizing that every single moment. How did I get here from the Appalachian Mountains in a house without a bathroom on an 8-acre tobacco farm? I have no idea. It's all a miracle to me. But I embrace that miracle. I embrace each moment. The key to happiness is mindfully embracing each moment.
Mm. And that, to my friends, is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have, because if we're not emotionally ruminating about our past, we're contemplating and planning our future. One of the things that I use as an analogy for what you just described is when I'm recording, like today, like right now, I'm recording, and I have my audio recording device up, and I can see that center line, and on the left side is the wave. That's the voice, your voice, my voice, and so forth. And then on the other side of that same line, there's nothing. Now, what's fascinating is that as soon as you see that wave on the left side, it's the past. And boy, it's instant. The other side of the line is the future. There's nothing there. There can't be, because we don't know what it is. I always get annoyed when I hear, and this will change the course of history, as if somebody knows what the course is, like they can see into the future. And it's that center line that is the right here, right now, you and I. And it is sort of a paradox, Doctor, because we can never hear or see or taste or smell in the now, because the moment our brain has processed the signals that are coming from the stimuli that are coming through our senses, and I said it was instant, it's the past. So is there a I don't want to say secret, but is there a method? I know that in your subtitle you talk about the four-step CAST process. What is the method that you have found that helps you to stay in the genuine now that, I guess, brings you happiness?
Well, as I said, Richard, I'm hard-headed. I tried everything else. I mean, I was raised in this rural environment. I was severely dyslexic, couldn't read coming out of high school. I was in middle school for 3 years in a trailer that was called a retarded trailer, and it had retarded trailer on the outside of the door. So unworthiness and shame pushed most of my life, and that pushed most of my life in an extraordinarily successful way by Western standards. But it led to broken marriages. I could save the world. 25 years in Africa, was in Darfur when 1 million people died. I could save the world, but I was hurting the people I loved the most. And it was extraordinarily painful. So At one point, after a second broken relationship, I went back to Wake Forest Divinity School and philosophy school, one of the best in the world, to study the issue of free will to determine whether or not I even had any. And I went through all the philosophers, starting with the Greeks and all the way through the present. And what I understood, what I come to understand, and because I'm a scientist, I'm PhD in biochemistry and genetics, I understood that we have inside of us this 70 million year old brain in the back part of our head. And it's our lizard brain, our squirrel brain. It's the same brain. It's our unconscious mind. And it is designed to keep us safe. It is designed to never forget a threat. It is designed to compete. It is designed to take people out. It is designed to take our genes to the next generation, our precious genes. It is designed, and it's unconscious, and it controls 95% of what goes on in our heads. So if we're focused on the past, or if we're focused on the future, these are all arising from that unconscious mind. Now, there's another much newer part of the mind, the brain, the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is much more recent. It can look at outcomes. It can simulate outcomes. It can weigh, but it's much, much slower than that unconscious mind. Unconscious mind's working in milliseconds. It's working 1,000 times slower than new brain. So we're getting these feelings, and then we turn them into conscious thoughts and then conscious reactions. So the caste system, and I wrote a book on that called The Rewired Brain, and it's how we screw up our lives with our unconscious mind. And I had a woman at Barnes and Noble, and she grabbed me. She literally grabbed me, and she said, "I hate you." And I said, "Wow, that's strong." At the book signing, and I said, "Why do you hate me?" And she said, "You told me in no uncertain terms why I was so messed up, but you did not provide me a solution." So after an 8-year meditation journey, and I'm the last person who should have been on a meditation journey. As a PhD in biochemistry, I poo-pooed that crap for years and years and years. 8-year meditation journey, a devastating accident with an Arabian horse that I had rescued that broke my pelvis completely in half, told I might die and never walk again, and then developed the caste system. And I'll go through each step of caste, but I wanted to give you a little bit of historical context of how I got to caste.
Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that caste has to do with probably that caste you were in after you broke your pelvis, and we'll get into that as we continue talking here with Ski Chilton, Dr. Ski Chilton, and his book, There Is Another Way to Happiness, the 4-step caste process that will transform your life. And one of the things that has often struck me as I've done these programs over the last, we're in our 15th year with this program. I've been interviewing for over 44 years, is the word transformation, or to transform, if you will. And I was talking with someone on one of these programs, and I was using the word, we want to give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true, to help change your life. And they said, you might want to switch that word change, because if you can change one way, you can always change back. Well, I kind of think you could do the same thing with transform, although I'd like to think of transformation as more of a evolutionary, progressive concept. But that's what they were saying is, do this. And one of the things that I have picked up on, Ski, is that in the New Testament, where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and they're all going around going, wow, look at you, you're changing water into wine, you're healing people, raising the dead. Hey, could you teach us to do that? And again, I'm paraphrasing. I am no King Jimmy. He says basically this. Oh, come on, you guys really are? Sure, I'll teach you, but here's the deal: you guys are going to do greater works than these. And I believe that those greater works are the transforming of our lives. Your thoughts?
Oh, I, I tell you what, we're brothers. And we are absolutely. I think the statement that that is in, and again, I'm no Bible scholar, but is in John, is the most audacious thing that Jesus ever said. He's sitting there going, you think I'm going to do great works? When I leave, you're going to do far greater works than me. And you're sitting there going, what?
Yeah.
I'm going to do greater? What? I mean, the entire, whatever, half of the world is, or whatever.
Yeah.
A third of the world is Christian. How am I going to do greater works? But not to get to my science, but just real quickly to tell you about a study that we've just completed that we're submitting to Nature Medicine. And we reanalyzed a clinical trial that had 26,000 people in it. And they were given omega-3s for 5 years. And the New England Journal of Medicine said, the outcome of the study is omega-3s don't help in cardiovascular disease or cancer. We then went to those 26,000 people, used 3 machine learning algorithms. There were 5,600 Blacks in that trial. We perfectly matched 3,706 Blacks and 3,706 whites, and rerun the clinical trial using AI and machine learning. And what the results showed was that you got an 88% reduction in myocardial infarctions in the African Americans and not the whites. My goodness, omega-3s, 88% reduction in myocardial infarction in the Blacks and not the whites. When Jesus said you can do greater things, I mean, when we publish studies that can so help outcomes of people who get the worst health care, those are big things. It's not big things that I'm doing. It's all a miracle to me. But it is things that the Spirit can do through us that are big, and that's including writing this book. This is my 6th book. I wrote Inflammation Nation, which was Simon & Schuster's lead health book in 2005, underneath a hospital bed for my paralyzed son, who had been paralyzed, one of the best football players in the state of North Carolina, and was paralyzed. And every day I was at Barnes and Noble, and I wrote a book, and a woman called and said, your product has changed my life, cleared my psoriasis. Would you? And I said, what do you do? And she said, I'm an author. And she was a New York Times. I said, well, I've written this thing. I don't think it's any good. I'm sure people asked you, but would you read it? And she called back the next day and she said, it's the best thing I've ever read. She said, can I send it to my agent? She sent it to her agent. In 2005, 26 publishers bid on that book and bought that, and Simon & Schuster bought the book. I mean, these things are amazing. They're miracles. I don't know how to explain them otherwise. We just get in this beautiful stream, and we're where we are when we need to be there, and we are on a beautiful journey to the sea. And it's a beautiful journey.
It is indeed. Even during the periods where I guess I like to use the metaphor where I'm going through the rapids, pretty tumultuous rapids sometimes. I'm still moving down I'm still going downstream. And one of the things that that I have talked about on this program with many of my guests is about laying down. Now, my eldest sister, she could float on her back. I know how to sink really well, so I never learned how to float on my back. I guess I'm too uncertain in that regard. But if I could, I would just lay back and let the current carry me. And it may move me to the left bank. It may move me to the right bank. It may keep me in the center. There might be some rapids. There might be some smooth sailing and so forth. But it seems to me like that's one of the things that we need to learn to do is, and of course, the term is to surrender and just let the universe carry you. Now, that doesn't mean that you just sit in the chair wherever you are and you don't do anything. You wait for my working in a Christian station back in the 80s and early 90s for 15 years. It was almost as if just go over and sit in the chair over there and God will move you. It doesn't work that way. You have to get up. You have to put legs to, if you will, legs to it. But you also have to follow the promptings. And I want to ask you about that in terms of something I mentioned earlier about people participating in the Decade of Perfect Vision, where we ask them to go within, to spend some quiet time in that quiet, still, peaceful, calm place, listening to that still small voice. What part of these 4 steps in regards to there is another way to happiness, where does that fall in terms of getting that divine guidance?
Yeah, let's go through CAST then.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. So what does the C stand for? So I like to think that I love the river metaphor. And I completely identify. And again, don't put rocks in your pocket to go to the bottom. Don't put your feet down. Don't get out of the river and watch everybody else. I love that metaphor. But what does CAST stand for? First of all, the C is awakening to consciousness. So Eckhart Tolle and it didn't start with Eckhart, DeMello, and William James. They all talked about this concept of the I and the me. There's 2 me's in me. Now, as a scientist, as an evolutionary geneticist, I would say there is this 70 million year old unconscious mind, and there's this prefrontal cortex, this conscious mind that can, if you will, allow me connect with divinity. And so awakening to consciousness, the C is understanding that there's 2 yous in you. And again, my first 3 chapters are who is I, who is me, and finding my I in the middle of my me storm. So Eckhart Tolle said that was enough for him. He awakened. I wish it had been enough for me, but just that concept was enough. The second step in CAST is deepening your awareness. We have all been hurt, and we have been hurt badly. I talked about the retarded trailer. There was some early sexual abuse. We've all been hurt. We've all been hurt badly. And that evolutionary unconscious mind never lets that go. It never lets, because its only job is to warn us, because we only have to get through age 25 and we have as many babies and pass from an evolutionary perspective. That's all. So its only job is to say, remember that, that's going to kill you, that's going to hurt you, that hurts you, that's going to get you kicked out of the tribe, you'll be by yourself on the African savannah, all of these. So the second step is deepening awareness of those things: fear, childhood trauma, my mind-made prison, and loneliness. Third step, you just said it, the art of surrender. Okay, am I going to give up control? Because that part of my mind that's controlling everything, that unconscious mind, the feelings. Am I going to surrender that? Am I going to surrender control? Because the only way to stay in the river, stay in the middle, not put rocks in your pockets, not put your feet down, not get out of the river, is to surrender, the art of surrender. So again, the chapters are that is wildfires and new beginnings and letting go. The third step is so many people will surrender and they keep having to surrender. I'm surrendering okay. And what that tells me is we have to surrender every day, but the T part of cast is trust. Trust the journey. If you're freaking out surrendering every day, you're not trusting the journey. So you have to trust. And I love what you said a second ago. So many people say surrendering is sitting on your butt and just surrendering. I've never had a better 4 years. I was at Johns Hopkins. I was at Wake Forest. I was the best place. I'm at the University of Colorado. I've never had a more productive 4 years than with this technique. It is, you allow it to come to you. It's like my country uncle used to say, life is moving through a set of doors. And each time you're given a door, and it's the better door to walk through, and you just keep walking through doors, and life gets more beautiful. So cast, again, awakening to consciousness, deepening awareness, the art of surrender, trusting the journey. And then at the end of the book are 13 weeks of meditation practices.
Meditation, mindfulness training, and so forth are pretty prominent in the. What I'm glad is no longer just the spiritual or new age or metaphysical realms. It's in the mainstream, because I find it fascinating that our institutions, not only of higher learning but of medicine, are beginning to understand that these things actually work. Now, unfortunately, there is one of our institutions that does not like it one bit, and that's our pharmaceutical industry. Because if we can de-stress ourselves, if we can focus on the here and the now, we don't need any medications to placate the symptoms, because that's what they are. They're symptoms. And this is fascinating to me, because you talk about, this whole business of surrender. Back in 2005, I was working for a station in Phoenix, and it was sold to what I like to refer to as this Christian consortium. They also owned the religious station that I had worked for from 1980 to 95. And the station at that time, 2005, was Air America Phoenix. Well, they were interviewed by the newspaper, and the newspaper asked them, are you going to keep the format? Because they're making money, And of course, we were one of the first to start making money within a 9-month period, which is unheard of in broadcasting. Oh, no, we're not going to change the format. We're going to keep it the same. I had worked for 15 years for this kind of mindset, philosophy, if you will. And immediately my mind says they're lying. They're going to change the format, primarily because of a passage from the Bible that says, do not be unequally yoked with non-believers. Well, Air America is everything and non-believer, so to speak, in that it certainly doesn't represent their philosophy. And so on February 28th of 2006, I was cleaning out my desk. My wife was working for a local hospital in Scottsdale, and I get a call at 2:30 in the afternoon from her saying, I just quit. And I'm just sitting there going, you do realize I'm unemployed too? Well, we're sitting and watching the TV. She comes over, sits next to me, and says, I'm scared. I feel like we're on the edge of a precipice. Well, even up to that point, Doctor, I was very much aware that there are two things that one does when one finds themselves at the edge of a precipice or cliff. And they're counterintuitive in the order in which they're given. First thing you do is you jump, and then you trust. And that's what we did. Now, when she said this to me, and I thought about our situation, there was no fear. I was not afraid. It was like at that moment, I knew, don't worry about it. First of all, the mortgage is taken care of. We've got a little nest egg over here if we need to use it. So we took some of that, came to Santa Barbara for a week, and then within a month or two, boom, we're driving cross country to Santa Barbara. Sometimes it's hard to hold on to that, isn't it? I mean, the techniques that you've just talked about, I certainly have the awareness that it has been done. I have done it and can do it again. And surrendering to the situation is quite honestly paramount. Because as I shared with you before we started, I've got a number of things that are happening that I have no control over. The only thing I have control over, if I'm correct, is how I act, not react, but act to those events that are coming and may not come. So I find it fascinating, and I'd love to have you maybe dovetail a little bit off of that, especially in light of your past. I mean, I suppose, would it be fair to say that you have a rags to riches story, but the riches are not exactly, multiple zeros before the decimal point?
Yes, I think it would be fair to say that. As I said, from an academic perspective, I just won the highest award that got a big old medal around my neck in Washington. It's the National Academy of Inventors, the most creative people in the world. I mean, yes, I mean, absolutely. But again, who cares? I mean, I've got this little cabinet over there with all my awards in it, and somebody said, you're going to have to get a bigger cabinet. And I just said, vanities, all is vanities, as Solomon did. But I'd like to speak to the issue of fear, because I think what you said is vital. Now, I've spent 25 years in Africa, and the last 15 I've spent in Sudan. And when Doctors Without Borders leaves, we go in, and we go into places where there is genocide, and we try to build safe zones, and we keep ourselves alive with our relationships. And the first time I went to Sudan, I was going to Darfur. And I was going to Darfur when 1 million people were getting killed. And I knew I was going to fly 8 hours, this huge country, through a no-fly zone, where with 10 tons of supplies, and we would negotiate to get this Antonov, this Russian plane, to get these 10 tons of supplies to land on an 800-meter runway. And I remember being in the Philadelphia airport, and my kids know I'm crazy, but they don't quite know how crazy. And I remember calling them one by one, my 4 kids, and I remember telling them I loved them and how much I loved them. They didn't know that what I was really saying was, there's a good chance I could be killed on this mission. There's a high percentage I could be killed, and I'm telling you goodbye, and I'm telling you I love you. At that moment, I remember looking up and saying, not my will, but thy will be done. At that point, there were 2 people, and it's not the 2 people I was talking about a second ago. There was this person outside of me that I seemed to recognize as me, but he seemed to be a superhero. He was doing all these things. He was in this windowless Antonov. He landed on this 800-meter runway. There were thousands of people dying all around him. He was brought a 4-year-old child that weighed less than 10 pounds to keep alive. I mean, this superhero was on four-wheelers, dodging bullets, 50 miles from the border where the Janjaweed were killing 1 million people. This superhero was doing a lot of things that I'm not capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
But surrendering gave a power and a fearlessness that would have not been possible for normal ski Chilton. And that is important. That is important. If we are going to do these great things, not by the world standards, but if we're going to do these great things, then we have to trust this journey. We have to surrender, not my will, but thy. In these most difficult of situations, I've had 2 cancers, 3 cancer scares. We have to surrender, not my will, but thy will be done.
That is the biggest challenge of all. And one of the things about free will that we have been given, and again, the way you have phrased it so well, is that when we surrender our will, we don't become automatons or slaves. We have made a conscious choice to allow, I'll call it the still small voice, you call it the divine, you call it God, whatever you want. We are making the choice to allow the divine to guide us. I don't know about you, Ski, but one of the things that is so fascinating is how we sit here pontificating, but also contemplating what will we do next? What will I do next? And that's sort of coming from the ego, the personality. And yet at the same time, I'm listening to that still small voice. And I could give you several examples of where I've listened. I have struggled with the guidance, but acquiesced in the end, saying, look, if I'm going to listen, then it would behoove me to follow the promptings. It's one thing to hear the prompting, isn't it? But it's another thing to actually do what you are being asked, not commanded, but asked to do. Because it's still always our choice, right?
Absolutely. And I think, so I'm going to speak to one thing real quick. Meditation, I want to emphasize, again, there was not a person who poo-pooed meditation more. And in my mind, there's kind of 2 camps. I went on Insight Timer, which, I think has 6,000 people on it when I looked today, because 600,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
and 60, 70,000 meditations. Only 4 or 5% of those resonated with me, because on one hand, you have none of this stuff that makes any sense to me. And I don't mean to put down crystal work. I mean, none of that makes any sense. And then you have on this other side, this strict control, and it makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me as a scientist, last year there were 900 studies on mindfulness. If you go to PubMed, 900 studies, there's 200 clinical trials. So we scientists are not poo-pooing this anymore. And there's, as you said, it is incredibly efficacious. But I want to come back to the still voice, because once I had my accident, the Arabian broke my pelvis in half. 60% of people die of that accident because it cuts their femoral artery, because your pelvis is flapping back and forth. And the doctor came in and he says, "I've got great news. You're alive. We've completely reconstructed your pelvis. It's completely metal. Good news, you're alive. Bad news, you're not going to walk again. Bad news, your sexual function, is going to be gone because you've done all these nerve bad." And it was at that point that meditation became real. And every single morning, I'd been meditating for 4 years, but that became meditation on steroids. Because now I'm in my wheelchair every morning. I'm rolling out at 5:30 a.m. I'm in front of a beautiful palm tree in Tucson, Arizona, looking at that palm tree. I call the palm tree divine presence. And every single day, I'm in front of that palm tree. And I've studied Buddhism for the last 2 years, and I love it. And they call it the witness. But for me, it was the witness at first, just looking at me, compassion for me. But then the witness became the healer. The witness became the counselor. The witness became the advisor. The witness completely transformed me. And you talked about transformation before, and I am an evolutionary geneticist. So transformation only happens under, at least in genetic evolution, under intense selective pressure, under intense circumstances. So this was the most powerful evolution, awakening of consciousness that I had ever had. And it allowed me to answer the question of the woman who came up to me in the Barnes and Noble who said, "You didn't provide a solution." And she was right. I didn't have a solution. But I have a solution now. Mm-hmm. And it's in my book, There Is Another Way to Happiness. It took 6 more years after the rewired brain to come up with that solution. But I love the still voice that you allude to. Of course, that is biblical language. And again, I love the analogies between the Buddhist language and the Christian language. And I love Thich Nhat Hanh and walking with Jesus, walking with the Buddha. These concepts, we're saying the same thing. The next book I want to write is a book perhaps called The Mindful Jesus, because people don't understand what that dude is saying.
No, they don't. If he were actually and this is just an observation on my part, folks, don't get all bent out of shape, please. If he were actually to return today, I don't even think he'd recognize the human race, at least at large. It's as if, and I've heard this phrase, we haven't even crossed the threshold out of the cave. That's how poorly we have done, poorly we have learned and assimilated some of the things you and I have talked about on this program. It's not to say that, we are the arbiters of the truth. It's just that, my goodness, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid growing up, we watched a lot of different television programs, and some of them I would sit there and I'd do it sort of silently. I'd weep, like Little House on the Prairie. I would cry, and when I watch, for example, during the holidays, I love the movie It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that's my favorite.
It makes me cry.
Yeah.
Because what's fascinating is that I can't really relate to George's feelings of inadequacy. because I have been so loved by my family and the people who have been around me. That I feel well supported in that regard, and I'm very grateful for that. But the reason I cry is because it's like, my gosh, there are so many people out there who do not just think, they don't believe they're worthy of the things, the abundance, the prosperity, in whatever form it takes, that comes into their lives. You've heard this phrase, here, let me give you this gift. Oh, no, 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 no. You shouldn't have. No, no, no. You keep that. You keep that. They don't know how to receive. And you can't have a giver without a receiver.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. Richard, you're really blessed to have felt so worthy. I didn't feel worthy. I felt shame. I felt lack of worthiness and shame. And it came from those early experiences of being thought that I was so dumb, dyslexia in a place, in an era where that wasn't being put in a retarded trailer when they called it that. So those childhood wounds were devastating and part of my awareness. But again, the way that I tried initially to focus on that. So it didn't matter what I accomplished. It simply did not matter, because if that way would work, 52-page CV would have worked, but it doesn't work. Yes, it's important, and the work is important. And I trained with a Nobel Prize winner, and it all works to benefit the world in a Western way, but it does not work to make you happy. And that is the great lie.
So if you were to, let's just say, have all of that taken away, all those accolades, the CV, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, would you still be happy?
I think that, as I said before, the accomplishments, my goal with this life is to love the world. Mm-hmm. And to love the world, whether it's through Africa, through my science, through writing these books, my objective is to love. That's what I'm here for. Mm. So I don't think I would be happy unless I was loving the world. Mm-hmm. I would be happy without the accomplishments, but I wouldn't be happy because I've been given instructions to love the world. Mm. That's the first principle. In science, we call things first principle, the thing that everything else is built upon. Mm-hmm. For me, the first principle is love, unconditional love, loving the world. I got a tattoo at 60, and it says, be still and know. Be still and know. Just be still and love the world. Know how to love the world. And my second tattoo, and again, you can't see it, but it's the Big Bang and the tree of life exploding out of the Big Bang 14 billion years ago. Again, we can argue, scientists or non-scientists alike, but something was created out of nothing, and there were 15 scientific constants that would, if they had been different, any one of them, mm-hmm. of one billionth, we wouldn't be here. You and I wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. So it appears someone was turning the knobs. Or something was turning the knobs. Now, again, that's not the only explanation, but we're on even ground. I laugh at scientists who are arrogant about this because they have no higher philosophical ground at this point. In fact, I would argue those of us of faith may have a higher, but in any event, there's my next to last chapter is called From Science to the Sacred. And that chapter really covers this point. My last chapter is called Embracing the Unknowables, and it's death and dying. And it's unlearning everything that you've learned before.
Yeah.
In your religious and becoming children again. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Again, quoting another biblical passage, come to me as little children, not childish, childlike. And there's a difference. We have a legislative body over on the East Coast that is everything and childish. The things that they are all focusing on have nothing to do with serving. It has nothing to do. When I hear comments, for example, I hear these records. Oh, this person is the longest serving male, the longest serving female, the longest serving whatever. I'm going, that's not what it was intended for. You go there to serve. And that's what you and I are doing. We're serving. That's what we're doing, our best, if you will, to serve the people around us. But at the same time, Ski, let me ask you, how important is it for Ski to take care of Ski? In other words, not in a big S, but a little s, put self first in this context.
Well, Richard, I'm going to tell you that it's my greatest weakness. I have a 76-year-old counselor that drops the F-bomb 5 or 6 times a counseling session. And she almost has to grab me by the collar because my drive to love the world, writing not the rewired brain, but there is another way to happiness. I was so blessed because I went to the coast of Mexico and wrote this book in 5 weeks, sitting 18 hours a day, not drinking, not eating. And it was coming out of me so quickly, it was like a medium. Now, as a result of that, I was a college athlete, so I have a bad cervical spine anyway, but that resulted in a cervical fusion. That type of obsession, that 70, that 18 hours a day and that 80-hour work week. So there's much I need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing that I most need to work on is just what you just said, self-care.
Yeah.
Taking care of myself, because with 3 cancer scares, a horse accident, again, 3 cervical fusions, 11 operations, I've about beat the hell out of myself. And we need to slow this down a little bit. We need to take care. We need to go back at the holidays and go back and be with my kids, and I'm going to do that. We need to go to my condo in Myrtle Beach, and we need to all play on the beach and laugh and have fun. And Ski doesn't do those type things. He's got to save the world, and as important as that is, that's the next stage of my spiritual evolution.
There is another way to happiness, the 4-step CAST process that will transform your life. By the way, I must say that I find the name of your publisher fascinating, which, by the way, folks, is Authors on a Mission. That is a great name for a publishing company. I think it's fabulous. By the way, his book is available through Amazon as well as through his website. He's on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. And we certainly hope that you will look him up as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I want to thank you for joining us here on the program. Chilton, PhD, the author of There Is Another Way to Happiness. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I would love to continue this with you because, yes, we've gone through the four steps, CAST, but I think that there's still more that we can talk about in regards to helping people, or maybe pursuing your goal and my goal of changing the world, of as you put it, saving the world. Years ago, when I was growing up, they said, you know, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be when you grow up, kind of stuff. And they even started out by saying, but don't say that you want to change the world. That's just too big. You just take bite-sized pieces and you do what you can. Well, I'm 63 now, and I want to save the world. I want to change the world for the better for everybody. By the way, you can name any conflict going on right now on this planet, and both sides are wrong. Both sides are just as wrong. And as I was sharing with you about a performance I'm involved in, we reenact a scene from World War II, the Christmas, not surrender. There was a time where the soldiers on both sides of no man's land said, we're going to celebrate Christmas together with the guys on the other side there. And they did that. Unfortunately, they went right back to fighting again. And of course, the statement is often made that, you know, this was the war to end all wars. And unfortunately, from more of a, observational and philosophical perspective, every person who's fought in the military or in combat, let me put it that way, because we didn't have the military going back too far. Every soldier's died in vain because we're still fighting. Now, I mean no disrespect to anyone who has served or who has died in the service. But think about it. Wasn't that kind of the point, to stop this? That's why they called it the war to end all wars, because they thought maybe, okay, we've had enough death and dying and maiming. Let's not do this again. But we've been doing it again and again and again and again and again. And that's really, really unfortunate. Want to ask you 3 final questions. But before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Dr. Chilton, I have 3 final questions that I would like to ask you, and I will ask those as soon as I tell you how thankful I am that you have been listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and for the month of December 2023, we are here at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. And I hope that you will tune into any and all of those slots to hear what our guests have to say. And always remember that what I am sharing with you on this program, they're observations on my part. I'm not putting any of this on anybody else. Whatever is being said, I am just saying, look, I'm an observer just like you. I am a participant just like you, and I'm trying to figure it out just like you. Just like Ski is doing the same thing. We also want to let you know that we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. We also ask that if you can support us financially, we would be greatly appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And they'll ask you to whom you are sending this support to, and you will put the email address richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And finally, please participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. We ask you to go into that quiet, calm, still, peaceful place and listen to that still, small voice. And with all of that being said, let me ask you the first of the three questions that we ask all of our guests at the end of our program. Who is Ski Chilton?
E. Chilton is a highly flawed individual who wants nothing more than to love the world, to change the world, and to make the world a better place with his short time on this planet.
What is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to make life meaningful, joyful, and happy for as many individuals as I come across, and as many individuals as possible in as many mediums as I can.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day was the last hour that I can remember. That I don't remember, and I'm not just saying this, Richard, I don't remember a better conversation or a more meaningful interview. So I only live in the present, and this present right now feels really, really good.
I would agree with you, and I thank you so much for being a part of it and a part of Tell Me Your Story. And we look forward to definitely having you back again to continue this conversation. You've got some other works that you have published, and would love to talk about some of the philosophical leanings in there that will help to change the world, and even, as you put it, to hopefully save the world from itself, if nothing more. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Richard.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Dad, I know you're happy because I am. To my dear friend Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.